Welcome to this Sunring astrology video with me, Malena. And today we are going to talk about Pluto and the energy of death, transformation, and rebirth, which sounds very dramatic, and it both is and isn't. And to understand Pluto better, what it means in your birth chart as well as for humanity, we are going to look at Pluto from an electromagnetic perspective. If you've seen some of my other videos, you have probably understood by now that that is what we do at Sunring Astrology. We have an electromagnetic perspective on astrology. And that is, I would say, it's like a revelation. Suddenly you understand what astrology has tried to describe for thousands of years. I mean, we're dealing here with some kind of force that is invisible. So astrologers have studied the movements of the planets, the sun and moon, and the stars, and seen that somehow their movements impact us here on Earth and try to map that influence. And this had been easy if we had been able to see those energies, those forces, but we don't. So the planets, the sun and moon, become reference points, you could say, to track this impact. But when we start to say astrology from an electromagnetic perspective, it becomes much easier to understand this impact. And I have a little mini series about electromagnetic astrology. It's 4 rather short videos that you can watch if you want to understand better what it really is and about our selves as electromagnetic beings. But that is actually where we are going to start today. So we do a little bit short electromagnetic sort of intro here first before we go into Pluto. So we humans are electromagnetic beings. We have electrons flowing in our body, and everything that has an electrical charge creates an electromagnetic field around itself. So every living thing, including us humans, create an electromagnetic field around ourselves. You can call it a toroidal field and check what it looks like if you search for images, but you can also call it aura, of course. And no one knows how long or how far this electromagnetic field that you create around yourself reaches, probably forever, if there is a limit somewhere. So you can imagine together we humans create this human collective consciousness through our own electromagnetic fields. But at the same time, we are also submerged in an enormous electromagnetic field, primarily shaped or created by Mother Earth. I mean, Mother Earth is the place where everything plays out, our human existence and our experience in this 3D reality. And if you're in the spiritual, you could say, awakening or movement or whatever what has happened the last decade, you have probably heard about the Schumann resonance. That is a pulse, an electromagnetic pulse between the surface of the Earth and the upper atmosphere. And this pulse averages around 7.8 hertz, but it's a band of frequencies between 3 and I think it is 60 hertz, which are the same kind of frequencies as our brain waves. So it's not a coincidence that they are the same, it's rather that our brains operate in synchronicity with Mother Earth, depending on our state of mind. During normal daily activities, our brains operate at these beta waves, but when we're more relaxed with alpha waves and so on, you have probably heard about this before. So we can here understand that our whole reality is, in essence, electromagnetic, although we don't see it. The only thing we see is visible light, and that makes up less than 1% of our reality. So most of it is filtered out by our brains and our 5 senses. But this is where we are. We are electromagnetic beings, and we are in this enormous field of electromagnetic frequencies, when we only see like less than 1% of everything there is. This enormous field from the Earth is, of course, also, it's not only shaped by the Earth, this field that we are submerged into, but also the sun and the moon. I mean, the sun is the life-giving sun. Without the sun, there would be no life. And then we have the moon, which impacts all these natural cycles on Earth. So these forces, the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon, are the primary sort of electromagnetic frequencies and forces or powerhouses that impact us. So before you are born, you're enveloped by your mother's womb and her electromagnetic field. But once you're born, you come out in this enormous field, so which will be place and space specific. So it will be a specific energy at that place and moment where you are born. So you will get sort of baptized in this ocean of electromagnetic frequencies. And that is why your birth is so important, the moment of your birth. And that is why astrologers draw a birth chart and interpret all the factors that could have impacted you at that very moment when you you get equipped by certain kind of frequencies or energies that probably your higher self thought that this will be beneficial for you to do whatever you are supposed to do in this lifetime. So if we look at this ocean of frequencies, how do we measure it in astrology? Well, you're probably familiar with the symbol for the sun and then the moon. The sun is our sort of personal foundational energy, and the energy from the moon gives us this emotional self-confidence, reflexive, spontaneous reactions. And then the electromagnetic field. What about that? Do we have any symbols for it in astrology? And we do. And I think you will not be surprised to hear that the electromagnetic field or the energy from the Earth is measured or tracked or symbolized in astrology by the ascendant. But not only the ascendant, but also because the ascendant is a rising part of the sky at the east, the moment of your birth. But also the descendant is important. It also measures the impact of the electromagnetic field on you when you are born. And the descendant is the descending part of the sky at the west. Then we also have the point at the south, the middle of the sky or medium Caeli, and the bottom of the sky, which is Imum Caeli, the point of this field at the north. So these points, which are like just points in astrology, it's like when you understand that they are actually coordinates in this electromagnetic field that we are all submerged into, then they become more, you get an idea what they really are. So we have the ascendant, descendant, medium Caeli, Imum Caeli coordinates in this electromagnetic field. So these things, the sun and the moon, and these points where the ascendant is the most important, are what we should focus on in astrology from an electromagnetic perspective. And if you compare these immense forces, life-giving forces, to the planets, it's quite easy to understand that the planets have a much, much less impact on our human life, but not only our human biological life, but also personal, mental, spiritual, because we can just compare the sun compared to a little planet, or the earth compared to a little planet, and the electromagnetic field compared to a little planet. So to go back to Pluto and the energy of death, transformation, and rebirth, Pluto adds to our electromagnetic reality that kind of energy. But it's more of a nuance or a little nudge in your birth chart and a little nudge on humanity as a whole. And it's not this super dramatic thing in your birth chart that wreak havoc with your life. It's, I think, why Pluto is often a bit, or in the planets itself, are a bit exaggerated, their impact normally in astrology. Normally, astrologers say that, well, of course, the sun, the moon are the most, and the ascendant are the most important factors. But then they dedicate an enormous amount of time to the planets and all the aspects and so on. And there have been, through these thousands of years where astrology has existed, more and more symbols, more and more aspects, more things have been added to it. And I think perhaps it's time to subtract, to take away, to look at the factors which are most important and focus on them. And also to make some sort of ranking scale that, okay, we look at how much time should we dedicate to the sun, the moon, and the ascendant compared with the planets, for example. This gives us a clue on what is important for a person to understand about their birth chart. But it's not that the planets are unimportant. They still contribute with their specific energies to this field. And Pluto, as I said, contributes to this ocean of electromagnetic frequencies with the energy of death, transformation, and rebirth. And they sound very dramatic, but they are natural and slow unfolding things or occurrences in our world or in our life. We can think about the changing of the seasons or the span of a human life. It's not that you see any changes from one day to another. So it's slow unfolding. You hardly cannot notice it until suddenly there's been this change and you have perhaps tried to resist it until you cannot resist to prevent it from happening again. And things like transformations can, of course, be very troublesome in a person's life, but it can also be very positive. For example, as we have mentioned here, a spiritual awakening. Many people would perhaps also see death as something that can happen suddenly, sudden death, an accident, but even that isn't really sudden. It also takes time because the first thing that dies is our physical body. But we are not only made up by a physical body, we also have the etheric body, which is like a copy of our energy copy of our physical body. We have the mental body and the astral body and our soul. And our soul takes our lessons from this life and back to your higher self and prepares for next lifetime. Whereas the astral body, it can stick around for some time, not really understanding that you have died. So death takes time because all these different parts of you that you don't see, your body does everything, all these parts or all these vehicles, as you would say, with if you have a theosophy vocabulary, they don't die at the same moment. So death in itself is a slowly evolving process, which also mirrors how Pluto moves in the sky, because Pluto moves slowly and it changes its position or zodiac sign every 15 to 30th year. And what we mean with this, and now we also come into the zodiac signs. If you imagine this whole electromagnetic field, what are the zodiac signs? It's easy to mix them up with the constellations, but they are not the same thing. The constellations are groups of stars that have lent their name to the zodiac signs, which are actually zones in this electromagnetic field. So they are zones of 30 degrees each. And it's like this electromagnetic field, it's not the exact same energy all over it, it differs. And that we can see by studying these zones, which are called zodiac signs. And if you think about the sun, it's easiest to make an example with the sun. The sun gives us some foundational personality energy. And depending on where the sun is, its energy will be filtered through that sign. So if you're born Taurus, for example, the sun was in the zodiac sign or the zone of Taurus, and its personal foundational energy will then be filtered by Taurus. So you will become a grounded person with a lot of earth energy that has a lot of perseverance and that create and can manifest things. Whereas if the sun was in, for example, Leo, which is a fire sign, you have a strong will and a drive for self-manifestation. So that is what the zodiac signs are. They are part of these, they're part or zones in this electromagnetic field that will filter the energy from the sun and the moon and the ascendant, but also the energy of the planets. So Pluto moves slowly. It changes its position in the zodiac signs slowly. As I said, every 15 to 30 year. And if you, as astrology does, put ourselves, humanity, in the center and observe everything. I mean, everything looks from our perspective as it is rising in the east, and then planets, stars, sun and moon rises. They all rise in the east, reach the highest point in the south, and then descend in the west. And they do that, I mean, it's one revolution every 24 hours, but not quite. So it's a slight change of positions here. And Pluto changes quite slowly its position in relation to all the other factors. So if you would plot this on a paper, it would look like this. It would do like small things. All planets do like a little beautiful loops. And since Pluto moves slowly, it will sort of it's called retrograde when it like looks like it goes backward in the sky. And since Pluto moves slowly, those retrogrades will also take a long time. And that's why Pluto stays sometimes 15 years in one sign and 30 years in another sign. So what has happened lately is that Pluto has changed its position from Capricorn, which is an energy of structure, boundaries, long-term planning. And now we are in Aquarius. Pluto has recently moved over to Aquarius, which is it's an more innovative sign, and it's friendly. It breaks down here hierarchies rather than build them up as Capricorn does. And even if Pluto is, as I said, compared to the sun and the moon and the electromagnetic field, the ascendant, it has a much less impact, especially on you as a person. When we look at all people, the whole of humanity, Pluto may still give us a little bit of a nudge. And then when many people are affected by this nudge, it could potentially start a snowball effect. So could start a movement that will bring humanity in a new era that will change the world. And perhaps that is where we are, not only because Pluto has moved over to Aquarius, but also because we are in this zone, age of Aquarius. And what that is, I explain more in my other videos and also on my website or on our website. So, but Pluto, slow movement, slow impact, which means that much of its impact is kind of hidden. And that's why also in astrology, Pluto has been connected to secrecy, hidden agendas, and power play in the background. And to wield power over life and death, that is also perhaps the most powerful you can do. So Pluto has also been connected with, as I said, power plays and so on, hidden from us, from our, well, we cannot see it. That is how I would describe the deep state, or Illuminati, or lizard overlords, I don't know, whatever you call them, bureaucracy in the background, that they have the ability for long-term planning so that normal people don't understand or see their plans and cannot perceive or understand why are we now in this situation. But it could have been planned for a very long time. We have to understand that the powers that be, or science, they say that astrology is just nonsense, but those who rule the world use it for their own benefit. So they tell us that it's nonsense, and then they use it. And all those occult forces that we have in our world. So when you look at Pluto in your own birth chart, first of all, I mean, what I've forgotten to say is also that Pluto was discovered in 1930. So we haven't had that thousands of years of experience or study of Pluto. So when we have this death, transformation, rebirth thing, we have to understand that maybe we should be a little bit wary about, is this a correct interpretation of Pluto's energy? Because with the other planets, or the other inner planets, we have had thousands of years of study, but with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, it's only, well, much shorter. So we should be a little bit careful when we, especially when it comes to this very dramatic and ominous interpretation of these planets. But Pluto has a minor impact on your birth chart. I think you should focus on the sun and the moon and the electromagnetic field first of all, and you can do that for several years. And then you can look a little bit at Pluto, but rather study Pluto to say, has Pluto's movement an impact on the electromagnetic field that concerns the whole of humanity? Have we reached a new era, or not an era because it's only about the last decades, but hopefully we have left some bad stuff from the previous 10, 20, 30 years behind us and have now entered something new, something friendly, without hierarchies, where we humans come together and build a better world. So that was all about Pluto in astrology, and I suggest you also check the other videos about electromagnetic astrology, because then it will be easier also to understand this video. So, thank you.